Welcome to this week's bonus show of Gaslit Nation. We are continuing our conversation with analyst and researcher Gil Duran of the essential Nerd Reich newsletter, tracking the dictator dreams of the broligarchs, and most importantly, what can be done to resist their apocalyptic fever dreams. To hear this full conversation and all Gaslit Nation bonus shows, get invites to exclusive events, join our weekly Monday Gaslit Nation salons, our monthly book clubs, and connect with other like-minded listeners, including in our Signal groups, be sure to grab your membership to Gaslit Nation on Patreon. Discounted annual memberships are available, and you can give the gift of membership. Thank you to everyone who supports the show and keeps Gaslit Nation's independent journalism going. We were your early warning system, correctly pointing out, at the risk of death threats and hit pieces meant to silence us, that Trump is a Russian-backed wannabe dictator. And now that everyone has finally caught up to us, stick with our show. That was an early warning system because we're also the ones who are going to tell you how to get out of this and what you can do in this moment to help pave the way to overcome the forces of darkness, because they are dark, dark, dark. Who was the Antichrist in the book of Revelations? He was a liar, the great deceiver. So again, don't listen to what oligarchs like Peter Thiel say, because they're all full of shit. They don't even more on that in this conversation, but listen to what they do. Listen to what they do. And what can you do in this moment? Number one, resist despair, because despair is a great liar and deceiver as well, because it wants to convince you, just like Steve Bannon does, just like Peter Thiel does, just like Elon Musk does. Despair wants to convince you that you're powerless, that you don't matter, but all of that is a lie. You matter, and you have so much power in this world to be defiant, to exercise your human right of human dignity, of human agency, of using your voice to lift up yourself and others, to fight like hell for yourself, for your family, for your community. You matter, and you will always matter. Absolutely no one and nothing can take that away from you. That is the truth. And the truth can never be killed, no matter how hard they try. So stand up, feel strong within inside yourself, and just always, always, always remind yourself that you are absolutely not alone. You have infinity on your side. That's all of us who are with you. So be strong, feel strong, and know that if all of us stand up and celebrate the infinite power of the truth inside of us, this will go away sooner. All right. This will go away sooner. We'll get out of this sooner. And so please, please, please join me at the Gaslit Nation phone bank on Wednesday, October 22nd at 6 p.m. Eastern with Sister District. We're going to be making calls Halloween style to Virginia. I will be in costume. I'm always in costume. If you're listening to this now, I am in costume. Guess what I am? Guess what I am? Guess what I'm dressed as? Just guess. You can write me at gaslitnation@gmail.com, gaslitnation@gmail.com, and tell me what you think I'm actually dressed as, because I would love to know your wildest takes on that. And then I will reveal, I will reveal the truth soon. All right. So thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to continue this conversation with the great Gil Duran. I'm also going to link in the show notes to a must-watch short documentary by More Perfect Union on Peter Thiel's Orwellian Big Brother, known as Palantir. Here's a clip, followed by the continuation of my discussion with Gil Duran of Nerd Reich, and I'll also link to his work in the show notes along with this documentary.
It's one thing to criticize your former employer. It's taboo to do that. But to criticize an employer that also owns extremely lethal technologies and surveillance technologies that are highly invasive and used in war zones is something else entirely.
It's 2025. We're all kind of used to government surveillance. The idea that we're all being watched all the time and don't own our own personal data has become normalized. We're also used to the military spending vast amounts of our money on just a few giant defense contractors. But one tech company wants to change both of those things. and become the ultimate military contractor and the ultimate arbiter of all of our data.
Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them.
Check out Palantir shares surging 22% after the company cited a boom in demand for its AI software from the U.S. government.
We're doing it. We're doing it. And I'm sure you're enjoying this as much as I am.
Palantir, a tech company based here in Denver, claims they can revolutionize government systems with their data analysis software, newly powered by artificial intelligence. They've been hired by the Department of Defense, the FBI, local police departments, and even the IRS and Wendy's to take in the information those organizations collect even more information, and use that data to draw conclusions.
It can be used to completely reconfigure organizations' ontology, its reality, what systems matter, what information matters, what processes matter, how they are structured, what biases are introduced at each of those stages.
We talked to a former Palantir employee, dug into decades of research, and listened to hours of Alex Karp's own words to unwrap the layers of Palantir's carefully cultivated sales pitch, how they capitalize on fear, uncertainty, and unrest.
I don't think in win-lose, I think in domination. This is a company built for bad times. Bad times mean strong finances internally. Bad times are very good for Palantir because we build products that are robust, that are built for danger.
Let's rewind a little. Palantir's story starts with one of the most effective things a company can have for sales: fear.
And so they get it all twisted, mostly because I think they filter everything through the lens of their ego, and because they surround themselves with people who never tell them how dumb they are, and who only, as Tim Dillon said on the Joe Rogan show, did nobody in Thiel's inner circle say, maybe don't give 4 lectures about the Antichrist? Maybe give 1 lecture, maybe give no lectures, right? Even people on the right are shocked and bemused by this. And so it really tells you something, that he would take it this far, that there's really nothing stopping these guys from enacting their bad ideas and imposing them in the world. They don't have a filter that says, hey, we all have things. I have things I don't say that I think, right? They can't filter, though. They can't say, hey, what should I really focus on? And so if you look at all the narratives, they're always the villain. They are always the bad guy, which makes our role very clear, which is to defeat this evil force in the world, and it's sad that we've come to this, and that, things are so scary right now. But that's why all this literature exists, is to show us the way, to be courageous, to have hope, to be in solidarity with others, to remember what we stand for, what our values are, and to remember the sacrifices that many others have made before us to keep our ideas, our freedom, and our country alive. And so, if they can be inspired by the books, we can be inspired by the books as well.
And tax the rich, because they have way more money than is good for them. It's just going to their head. But thank you for that. I want to ask you about Palantir. President Trump, the New York Times reported, is asking Palantir to essentially make a big brother. Under Trump's first administration, the DOJ became dependent on Palantir to map bad guys. Biden came in, did not clean that up, let it stay. And now Trump is back, and he wants to take it to the next level of mapping all American citizens, getting all of our data. And this is being reported on out in the open in the New York Times, that, like you alluded to earlier, they're behaving in such a way where they don't think they'll have to face accountability in elections. Anne Applebaum was on the show recently, said the same thing. And so tell us about the state of Palantir. What are they ultimately trying to do, and what risk is that to us?
Well, the biggest risk of all is that all of these tech companies are now becoming completely embedded in our government, and our government's becoming dependent on them. So it's literally fusing corporate power with tech power, which is in many ways the definition of fascism, to have this much government power concentrated in private hands. And these are also unscrupulous people, so no matter how much they say there are certain laws in place preventing abuses, we can't believe or trust any of that. They're not going to abide by it. And interestingly, one of the things that Thiel says is that the Antichrist would be someone who's trying to create a totalitarian government in the world. Well, government massive surveillance database of all of the information on American citizens sounds a lot like that, right? He's the one pushing Big Brother. And even Ross Douthat at the New York Times pointed that out when he interviewed Thiel and he went on his Antichrist rant. So we're seeing these companies seize power that rightfully belongs to government and should be under public control. At the same time that in many ways they speak openly about the desire to create new forms of political entities that can rival the government's power. You know, this idea of the network state, it's kind of what this whole started as libertarian, but it's increasingly authoritarian idea out of Silicon Valley that they have enough money and technology to not have to take part in democracy and to create their own little countries or nations where they can do as they please. And it's not clear to me why Democrats and Republicans have given these guys the tools to basically become an internal enemy to the country and a rival to the power of the United States. And I think that if the Democrats ever get the country back, there has to be a concerted effort to cut these guys out of government for good and to make sure that the power is public and not held in private hands. Maricha Shaka wrote a great book called The Tech Coup last year that talks about how all of these companies have just been allowed to go into government and become sort of parasites in it, but capture a tremendous amount of power for themselves. What we're seeing is that it's a very dangerous dynamic to allow these guys to think that they can take on the government, in part because they are the government now.
And what does their libertarian base think about that?
I think libertarianism is pretty much dead at this point, right? It's back to the handful of nerds who have a belief in this fantasy that can never exist. These other guys have moved on. And that was, people talk about the speech where in 2009, or in the piece he wrote, Peter Thiel said, "I no longer believe freedom and democracy are compatible." He was basically saying in that speech that he was moving on from libertarianism. He didn't see any future for it as a political project. And, a few years later, he ends up being a Trump supporter. And here we are. So this is what became of the libertarian project. And part of the big flaw with libertarianism is that it's based on this adolescent, childlike view of human nature and politics. Anybody more familiar with politics knows that the moment you have the power to become the power and the authority, you tend to take it. So there was never going to be some, hey, let's all just disarm and nobody has power over anybody else. And we're seeing that play out now with Thiel. Again, a lot of what Thiel does is very contradictory, right? He talks about the Antichrist while giving a definition that could very easily be applied to him. He talks about avoiding totalitarian government while simultaneously creating the tools of totalitarian government and partnering with an authoritarian administration to impose this surveillance on everyone. So there are all these weird contradictions, but I think we have to judge people by what they're actually doing, not by what they're saying. And so I don't think there's anything libertarian about any of this, and it never was. Libertarianism was just a vehicle to mask some of these ideas during a period where that was necessary. But we're living in a very masks off period right now.
Absolutely. I mean, they don't even hide it anymore. And during the election, at least they were saying, oh, Project 2025, that's not us. And then Russell Vought was caught on a hot mic saying, oh, no, Trump's all in for Project 2025. So what's amazing is they tried to downplay their plans in the election, but now it's like Trump is posting memes celebrating Project 2025. It's like they are having their ICE agents just SWAT team into a building in Chicago and kidnap people, including American citizens. And that's not only to destroy those innocent lives, which is what they get off on, but also as a warning to the rest of us. Like, don't you dare try to stop us, or this could be you next. And so I think, and they're paying their ICE idiots like so much money to buy their loyalty and to really cement them as their own personal security forces in their war of us against them. So there is a way out of this, and that is, as you have said, remember that there's more of us than there are them, and be very, very clear between good and evil here. It's not what we say, it's what we do, and what we need to do is stand up for ourselves and each other and the rule of law. So what do you see? You've been in the room of Democratic Party power. How do you see the Democrats in the power centers meeting this moment or not? And what would you advise them to do in order to meaningfully stand up for our Constitution, for our very lives in this time.